Welcome to a deep dive. We've got quite a stack of notes and articles you've shared with us today, and we're going to be plunging into a really, really significant area within Islamic scholarship.
That's right.
We're unpacking this, well, intense and continuous focus that Shia ulama, the scholars, have placed on the sciences of the Quran, especially its interpretation, which, is called tafsir.
Exactly. And the material here, it really lays out a tradition that isn't just some historical footnote, is it?
No, not at all.
It's presented as this living, evolving intellectual force. It's really central to this school of thought. So we're going to look at why this focus is so pronounced and, what the sources say makes it distinctive.
Right. Because it's described as more than just academic study. It feels like a fundamental pillar in this material. So yeah, let's jump in. Let's explore this history, look at some, frankly, remarkable examples, and see how deeply embedded this practice actually is.
Okay, starting, I suppose, where these sources do with just the sheer persistence of it all.
From the classical era, centuries ago, right up to today, this tradition of tafsir in the Shia school, it's described as having never stopped.
Yeah, continuously alive and developing. That persistence, it's really striking, isn't it?
It is.
It signals this foundational commitment to really grappling with the divine text.
And the notes, they highlight a key characteristic running through it all. It's consistently depicted as deep, philosophical, and reflective.
Deep, philosophical, and reflective. Okay, that sounds like, it sounds like more than just explaining the literal words on the page.
Oh, definitely.
Based on what's here, What does that really mean for how they approach the Quran?
Well, it suggests they're deliberately going beyond the surface level. The sources indicate it's about, connecting the Quran to broader intellectual frameworks, things like philosophy, ethics, even irfan, mystical insight. It's not just asking what does it say, but what does it mean in its deepest sense. It encourages these layers of contemplation, synthesis, much more than just a literal translation. Right. Synthesizing, not just decoding. So, okay, if this has been going on for centuries, and it's got this deep philosophical bent, how's that playing out now? The sources give a pretty interesting picture of the contemporary scene.
They really do. And one of the most, I think, significant points raised is that today, in the contemporary era, it's become almost standard for nearly every major Shia ulama to also be a mufassir, an interpreter of the Quran.
Wow, okay, so not just specialists in, say, law or jurisprudence.
Exactly. They aren't just mastering fiqh and usul. They're seen as needing to produce these, phenomenal works of tafsir. And these works are becoming global points of reference, according to this material.
That really elevates tafsir, doesn't it? From maybe a specialized field to something essential for a top scholar.
Yeah, it speaks volumes about the commitment, right? At the highest levels to engage directly and deeply with the Quran.
It's integrated into what it means to be a leading scholar in this tradition now.
Precisely. That's the sense you get.
And the material, it actually names some huge contemporary works that illustrate this. Like, first up, Tafsir al-Mizan by Allama Tabatabai, called a masterpiece.
Yes, al-Mizan. And what's highlighted about it is how it consciously brings together thematic, rational, and spiritual approaches.
Okay.
The sources describe it as not just explaining verses, but actively opening horizons of meaning, linking the text to philosophy, history, even socio-political reality. It really exemplifies that integrated multidisciplinary thing we were just talking about.
Right, that synthesis again. Okay, and then there's Tafsir Namuneh by Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi. This one, the material says, had a very specific aim, making Quranic teachings accessible for modern society. Born from a collective effort, it says, to address contemporary challenges.
And this shows that other vital dimension, doesn't it? The practical relevance.
Yeah.
Tafsir here isn't just for the seminary classroom. It's intended as, real guidance for navigating modern life's complexities, directly rooted in the Quran. It underlines its relevance beyond just academic debate.
Makes sense. The sources also mention figures like Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli and Ayatollah Misbah Yazdi. They're noted for expanding tafsir with really deep irfani, Nasik and falsafi philosophical approaches, turning the Quran into both an intellectual and spiritual guide.
Which, again, shows the sheer breadth within the tradition. It's not monolithic.
Right.
It can accommodate these different intellectual pathways, rigorous logic, deep philosophy, mystical insight, all serving the same goal, plumbing the depths of the divine text.
Okay, but maybe the work that gets the most emphasis in these notes, just for its sheer scale, is Tafsir al-Tasnim. This is another work by Ayatollah Abdullah Jawadi al-Muli. described as this magnificent undertaking.
Yeah, he's presented as a leading contemporary figure, philosopher, mystic, and interpreter, all rolled into one.
And the details on Altasnium, they're pretty staggering.
They really are. The sources state it was written over 40 years.
40 years.
And spans 80 volumes.
Wow.
Just think about that scale. It's noted as potentially one of the longest, most comprehensive tafsirs in all of Islamic history.
80 volumes, that's just immense. What specifically sets it apart, though, according to the notes, besides the size?
Well, it's highlighted for its unique blend. It brings together thematic, philosophical, and Irfani or Gnostic approaches in a really integrated way. But crucially, the sources also stress its unwavering commitment to the method of tafsir by Al-Quran.
Ah, right. Interpreting verses using other vices from the Quran itself.
Exactly. So it anchors all these intellectual explorations firmly within the text's own internal coherence.
So it's intellectually expansive, but also deeply rooted textually. What about the range of topics it covers?
Well, the material indicates it goes way beyond just explaining individual verses, line by line.
Yeah.
It apparently delves into really fundamental issues in theology, philosophy, ethics, even sociopolitics, with remarkable depth.
It sounds like he's practically building an entire worldview through the lens of the Quran.
That's precisely the picture you get from the sources. Al-Tasnim is presented as this multidisciplinary tafsir, aiming to unite revelation and reason, text and context, the zahir, the outer meaning, and the batin, the inner meaning.
A unified understanding.
Yes, a conscious attempt to forge that from all these different angles the text offers.
Okay, now, this intense focus on the Quran described in the sources, it isn't just about scholars writing these huge books, right?
No, absolutely not. The notes are very clear on this point. This whole intellectual pursuit is deeply tied to a broader vision. It's about actively working to build what's termed a Quranic society.
A Quranic society. How does that manifest?
Well, in places like Iran, for example, tafsir isn't some elective you might take. It's described as a core, compulsory part of the seminary curriculum, the Hawza.
Compulsory, okay.
And also, initiatives for memorizing the Quran get really strong backing, it says here, from the highest religious authorities, the Marja.
So the scholarship feeds directly into education, into community practice.
Precisely. It demonstrates that the intellectual work of tafsir is connected to this deeply held belief mentioned in the sources.
Yeah.
That the path towards a truly just and civilized society fundamentally depends on returning to and deeply understanding divine revelation.
And tafsir provides the framework for that return.
Exactly. The intellectual and, you could say, practical framework. It's not just about personal enlightenment. It's seen as foundational for society.
Right. Societal grounding and potentially transformation. So, okay, let's try and pull all this together from the material we've looked at. What's the big picture here? We've seen this tradition of tafsir that's continuous, deeply intellectual, philosophical, reflective.
Yeah, and we've highlighted some incredible contemporary examples. Al-Mizan's integration, Namune's accessibility, its philosophical and Gnostic depth from figures like Jawadi Amuli and Misbah Yazdi, and of course the truly monumental Al-Tasnim.
And we've also seen how this whole effort isn't just confined to scholars' studies. It's connected to this larger project of shaping society through really intensive engagement with the divine text, teaching it in seminaries, encouraging memorization, trying to live by its principles as understood through tafsir.
And the sources, they conclude with this really powerful idea, I think. Contemporary Shia ulama are seen not just as, guardians preserving a legacy, but as pioneers.
Pioneers, how so?
Because for them, tafsir isn't merely a science or just another academic field. It's explicitly described here as a civilization project.
A civilization project. That's a strong phrase.
It is. The idea being it's not just reading a text, it's seen as actively shaping humans. And through shaping humans, shaping history itself.
Wow. That's a profound way to frame the act of interpretation, isn't it? Thinking about how that dedicated, deep engagement with a foundational text through a practice like tafsir is viewed not just as understanding the past or even the present, but as this active force intentionally trying to shape the future, influencing the very course of history. Definitely something for you, our listeners, to ponder as you reflect on this deep dive. And that brings us to the end of this exploration into the world of Shia tafsir based on the sources you shared. We really hope these insights have been as illuminating and thought-provoking for you as they were for us going through them.